On this episode of AV Week, Microsoft has released a new IoT report. Guitar Center is opening up a new experience center and why that matters to you, and translating end user security needs to the manufacturers. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 415, recorded Friday, August 2nd, 2019. AV Resource.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Extron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
And by Draper. And by
Vadio, makers of the new NDI professional broadcast camera, the RoboShot 30E NDI.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio, visual, news, and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered for this week, first and foremost, her name is Dawn Mead. You know her as AV Dawn. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Also with us is Mr. Charlie Jones. Charlie works for Sennheiser. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Always happy to be in the country and, more importantly, to participate in your podcast.
Yeah, Charlie bounces around here and there, and he has more stamps on his passport than most people I know. Also with us is Mr. Jay Myers. Jay is currently working for AVI-SPL, but when I first met Jay, he had his own integration firm and has since sold to AVI-SPL. So that is who he works for. Welcome, sir.
Appreciate it, Tim. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And we're actually going to talk about another acquisition by AVI-SPL here in a second. But first, this one is kind of an interesting to me. Guitar Center has opened up a new facility in Nashville. It's Experience Center. And we've talked about Experience Centers here a number of times the last couple of years. Several folks have opened them up, specifically manufacturers, right? Not for nothing, but Sennheiser has Experience Centers. Harman has Experience Centers. Sure, opened up their Experience Center north of here in Chicago. I'm in St. Louis, and that's north for me. But this is the first time that I'm aware of a chain like Guitar Center opening up. And before you turn the podcast off too quickly, understand that the Guitar Center is one of your competitors. And I'm not saying that because folks can pick up cables there. Guitar Center, a couple of years ago, purchased an integration firm. And they've expanded that integration firm. So they are legitimately in your customers' boardrooms and conference rooms. So these are folks that are looking at ways to bring your customers, over to their side. Dawn, we'll start with you because you work for an end user now. You have worked for integration firms, but you work for an end user now, not the one that we can name. But as an end user now, is something like this helpful to get you to not to play too much on the word experience, but to experience maybe new technology or new solutions that you may not have thought of?
Well, I mean, from a marketing perspective, I completely understand the drive to develop these experience or innovation centers within manufacturers and even integrators like Guitar Center, because you get the chance to show off your product or products in a way that you can fully control, you can fully design, you can fully put together this vision to share with your customers. And there's a lot of power behind something like that. If you can get your customer in there looking around and, again, not to use the word again, but experiencing all that you have to offer, it really can make a difference. However, from an end user's perspective now, my day is full. Everyone on my staff, our days are full. We have so little time to get done everything that needs to be accomplished. And granted, this is a very huge company, but there's so little time that if I were to take time to drive to the Sennheiser Experience Center and the Extron Experience Center and the Crestron Experience Center and the Harman and the blah, 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 like there isn't enough time in the day. And this is the argument that I've made for several years now of why shows like Infocom are still important, and this move towards experience centers and away from necessarily exhibiting isn't. I can justify to my bosses and their bosses the expense of flying me to Vegas or Orlando, putting me up for a week, and then getting to see this critical mass of technology and people. Granted, you're in a convention center, it isn't the best environment. You can't control every little micro blip of power or internet or whatever. So you don't get the full experience the way you would in an experience center. But it's all right there. I don't have to take any more than those so many days, and I can see what I need to see in order to make a decision to say, okay, well, I've narrowed it down to these 2 or 3 companies. Now I'm going to have them come into me, or we're going to find time to go to an experience center to see what they've got. But I can't do that for everybody. So I get where they're going. I think it's a good concept. And in some cities where everything's nearby, it might make sense. But for my own life, and probably that of a lot of corporate AV end users, I mean, ain't nobody got time for that, to quote the meme.
And Charlie, to Don's point, this AVDG is the commercial side of the Guitar Center, the AV commercial AV side of Guitar Center. When they crafted this house, and that's what it is, it's a house, they brought in several different vendors, right? This is not all one folks. So to Don's point, almost, would that be then beneficial for somebody like Sennheiser or another manufacturer to work with them to make sure that your products are in there, because not everybody can go to Infocom. So you've got regionalized areas where folks can kind of experience these technologies.
It brings up a lot of good points, Tim, and to Don's point. And I think one of the interesting things to also point out is that AVDG is, in addition to now being part of Guitar Center, earlier was also even a residential integrator. And so to me, this house really is a little bit of a snapshot of where our industry is kind of going, and that we see a traditional a traditional retailer combined with a traditional integrator that also is combined with a residential division, all putting together kind of an experience center. And I think where that makes sense, and what we're struggling with as a manufacturer, is that there is so much information out there. You hop on Amazon, you read a review. This thing is great. This thing is crap. Right next to each other. And the hard part for us as a manufacturer is, how do we get in front of customers? And so, like as Don indicated, sometimes trade fairs are a way to do it. Other times it's through the consultant community. But sometimes just having that showroom out there that they can come in and quote unquote kick the tires is beneficial. But really, from a manufacturer, where all this comes from and where we participate in these things is, we are desperate to get in front of the right people. As we see consolidation from within the end user community, whether we see it within the integration community, all of a sudden it becomes very important for us to get in front of the right people. And it's interesting because we see a lot of people, Guitar Center Pro being one of them that's doing this experience center, and other people are trying it. And of course, there's only so many marketing dollars to go around. But we're happy to do this because it helps us get our message across. But I think that if you look at the big picture, a lot of these experience centers, including even our own experience centers, sometimes when you stop and count the dollars 2, 3, 10 years later, the investment's not really there. So it'll be interesting to see if the investment really pays off 5, 10 years down the road, or if this is one of those things where once the manufacturers say, yeah, we're not willing to keep subsidizing it, they close the doors and move on to something else. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these retail centers are kind of the place for you to go try something and then buy it on Amazon.
Jay, let me bring this back around here. As the integrator of the group now, there have been a couple different stories that have looked at this from a couple different sides, and I'm going to reference Heather Sidorowicz, one of our frequent guests on Matt Scott's AVWeek. Heather was traditionally a residential dealer. She has moved more into commercial. She's actually not shut down her showroom completely, but it's by appointment only, right? So she still has that experience center, right? To keep using that word, but that she still has the space. It's not necessarily, though, for everybody just to kind of walk in and what have you. Mm-hmm. So is it something where, whether it's Guitar Center or it's AVI-SPL or it's the folks here in St. Louis, where it's we can create a space to make sure that folks can get their heads wrapped around some of this new technology or some of these services that maybe aren't as easy as, well, I understand what a speaker is, right? But it's more integrated like that, where it's not something where there's a lot of outlay, but there's a strategic area where you can take folks whether that's your own space or it's someplace else where that makes sense to work with manufacturers and bring all this stuff together.
Well, I thought the story was really interesting for a lot of reasons, one of which is the fact we have an office in Nashville, and obviously their music business is huge over there, so having Guitar Center tying into an AV integration group and everything, I think could be a stroke of genius, actually, because, I mean, I'm only speaking really of that market. I don't know the rest of the country as well as I know Nashville, but with a lot of the people making decisions or involved with some of this, our technology, you know what, a lot of them are ex-musicians, and guess where they're going to go and buy their guitars and go walk around. I think it's an interesting play. I'm not excited about having more competition in Nashville. I got plenty already. But on the other hand, you have to have some kind of hook to get your customer to come into whatever experience center. And if you got that, the Guitar Center and some other things they have interest in, then you're not so one-dimensional. I'm going to, be interested in seeing where that goes. And but I frankly think it's a pretty neat idea. And but to Charlie's point, let's see where it's at 5-10 years down the road.
Absolutely. All right. Speaking of 5 or 10 years down the road, Microsoft has unveiled a new IoT report, quote unquote, the IoT state of IoT adoption. And this report is called IoT Signals. It's a new research report designed to provide a global overview of the IoT landscape. A couple of things that this report found out. Number one, the IDC expects there to be 41.6 billion connected IoT devices by 2025. Pause right there. A number of years ago, I want to say it was 2011, IBM did something similar and said that there would be 1 billion devices by 2016 or 2017. Did not hit that, right? So anytime you're forecasting stuff like that, it's always tenuous. It's always a difficult thing to do. But that's my only digression on this. Microsoft has identified 7 key areas for success as they're working with partners like Target and Starbucks and other of their partners. Business strategy, leadership and organization, a technology roadmap, talent operations, and core business processes. Charlie, I'm going to start with you because you're the manufacturer on this. Looking at Sennheiser's roadmap, and I'm not asking you to break any NDAs or make me sign one, but you guys have been doing, you every year, whether it's the wireless spectrum here in the States or abroad, looking at different things, you guys have a roadmap. When you're looking at IoT, how do you get information back from your clients as to what they need or what they want, or do they know what they need?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tim, that this is the kind of thing that frankly makes us pull out our hair and keeps us up at night. On the manufacturing side, we like to sometimes pretend that we have all the answers, and sometimes what seems to be a surefire thing right now, 5 years from now, is not the case. And with the explosion of Internet of Things, I don't think any of you would have noticed a matching explosion of Ethernet jacks around your house, your hotel, your office. So, of course, it all ends up being wireless. And being that we are a microphone company that does a lot of wireless technology, this, of course, is a huge concern for us because while Shure and Sennheiser are the 2 biggest wireless microphone players in the world, when you look at us compared to a Microsoft or an AT&T or Verizon or any of these guys, well, let's just say that our earnings combined equals probably the coffee budget for Microsoft. And so when they decide they're going to do something, we don't really have a whole lot of say in it, and we have to react. And so it's a very fluid thing. It's changing rapidly. We're seeing a lot of iterations. We're seeing a lot of new revisions. And it's the old, nothing is constant but change. So for us, there's multiple sides to this. One is how are all these Internet of Things communicating? Is this Zigbee? Is this DECT? Is this through cellular protocols? Is this through historical proprietary protocols? And then picking one of those is only a small part of it, because then we open up a huge issue, and one that frankly, our industry is just as guilty of everybody else, which is overlooking the security side of it. Folks want to bring your own device, and now they've got it on the corporate network. Well, now we come to find that what was just a wireless microphone or what was a wireless presenter system becomes a hole or a vector for attack. And then before you know it, every bit of confidential company information or all of our social security numbers, as we just saw with Capital One earlier this week, I think. Before that was the whole Experian hack. A lot of these things, didn't start with necessarily dedicated hackers saying, I'm going to find, targeting this. They're looking for open vulnerabilities. And it may be that, wireless microphone, it may be that presenter, it may be that control system. And as an industry, we talk about, hey, the convergence of AVIT and how we can speak their language or right there with them. But where we really still need to learn a lot from the IT guys is the security side of it. One little anecdote, we recently came out with the second generation of our ceiling tile microphone, and the core technology is exactly the same as the first generation. And everybody said, well, what took so freaking long for you to come out with this? It's the same kind of technology. And you want to know why it took so long? Security. Because all of a sudden there's a little RJ45 connector on the back of that microphone. The connector itself costs pennies. However, all the security side behind it, the security stack, how do you update it? How do you adapt for these things? This is what's been frankly a nightmare as a manufacturer. And it's not just in the microphone world. The video guys have it even worse because they need more bandwidth and they need the constant ability to be online. So Internet of Things is awesome. We're all in this industry because we love gadgets, and the more that they're interconnected, the better. But I think we haven't heard even the beginning of some of the security ramifications. And as an industry, if we want to be taken seriously, that we're sitting at the same table with the IT kids, we better make sure that we've got our house secure and that we're not going to be the next vector that gets splashed all over the news when Coca-Cola or someone is hacked.
Yeah. Jay, when you're talking with your clients and you're developing a platform and a solution for what their problems are and what their next iteration or their next upgrade or new building is, how are you talking with them? How do you like Charlie says, get the seat at the table at the big table, making sure that they understand and they're comfortable with you and your team, being on the network?
Well, we've been working on this for a while. My top engineer, recognized this trend in IoT several years ago. So we've kind of conditioned our prospects and clients around here, to examine our capabilities as it relates to all these networkable devices. To Charlie's point, though, a lot of them have concern about security. A lot of them kind of figure out that, even though it's a great topic, and if we can embrace it and help them with that and as part of the AV integration strategy, that's a plus on our side of it. I think there's still some level of concern out there about where, implementation of this on a larger scale, can it really, be everything they want it to be and moving forward. But again, we've had this discussion about IoT for many, many years, and presented to customers about our capabilities and for the most part, pretty positive response. But again, there's concern. And particularly, as Charlie pointed out, that, like any of this stuff, and every time a news story comes out about a security breach, that increases the uneasiness,
Yeah, absolutely. So Don, as someone who works as an end user in the government-ish sector, there are certain things that you guys are obviously concerned about. However, as an end user, you're also looking at this IoT technology and the reports that come out, like from the one from Microsoft, saying, yeah, absolutely, this sounds neat, this sounds interesting. So how do you guys marry those two in an environment that is obviously very much concerned about security?
Well, I have to tell you, just in the past week alone, literally in the past 5 days in a business week, I can't tell you how many times I've told my internal customers, well, what you're asking is a very simple solution in the AV world. However, in redacted company names, IT world, we can't use our AV solutions. We have to look for something that meets our security requirements and can do what you want to do. So it's a case of a lot of times I'll have answers just by virtue of being in the industry so long. I know what technologies are out there that we AV people can do and provide, and great manufacturers and great integrators can do. But 90% of them or more aren't approved for use by our InfoSec team, by our sector security team, by program security team, by our customers' security teams. There's this like endless process just to bring a demo piece in to a conference room to test off net, let alone to get something that's installed in our facilities that can be used on net. And even when they're on net, they're on limited net. So it's very much a balancing act thus far. I'm still kind of new to the end user role. I'm still kind of new to this very secure environment. Granted, I've worked when I was with integrators with a lot of government agencies and military and so forth, just by virtue of being outside DC. Everybody works with them. So, I was probably a little bit more aware of security ramifications, a lot of our equipment, than your average integrator, just because that's what we do here in this region. But since coming to work here, I've had to ramp up my education on the cybersecurity and the network security and all of those things substantially. And I can see, and it drives me nuts, where the rest of our industry is lagging behind, and I mean, it sounds like, Jay, your integration company has this on your radar. Probably nowhere near to the level that a lot of my peers would need you to be. Same with Charlie, same with anybody in the industry that's watching or listening, even the ones that know what's going on. As a whole, our AV industry is kind of behind. So, I struggle with that. I'm like, we have these cool technologies with IoT, with some of the newest innovations coming out, with this critical mass of exploration and innovation that's coming through, our manufacturers. But I can't touch most of it.
Yep. And
I can't even look at it.
To Don's point, and I had this little bit of an epiphany at during a conversation over some adult beverages at Infocom when someone asked me for the umpteenth time, where's the cool stuff, the guy in the back of the convention hall that's invented the flux capacitor? And, when we all started in this industry, and I've worked with a lot of you guys over the years, we remember when we had a lot less gray hair or a lot more hair. And every year you'd come away with, oh, did you see that thing? And it really kind of concerns me as our industry matures that I think a lot of the innovation, like Dawn was just describing, is being stifled because these little startups, they get to a point where then you go to a large bank, you go to a large end user, and they're like, look, this is great, but we can't have you on our network. And without being on the network, it doesn't work. And then it either dies, or at best, it gets sucked up into the giant machine that is the Google, the Microsoft, the Crestrons, the Extrons of our industry. And I think, why does the pace of innovation seem to be slowing? I think the security side of it is kind of behind the scenes undermining a lot of that innovation. And I hope that we find a good secure way to address this because frankly, I'm still waiting for my hoverboard.
And actually, if I can jump off of Charlie's point, I agree with that there is some stifling of innovation, but I've also seen in the past maybe 4 or 5 years, right at the top, Tim said, in 2011 or whatever, they predicted 1 billion devices and they didn't make that number. And now they're predicting 46, 48 billion devices and we may or may not make it. Yeah, thank you. But I don't think that that's unrealistic because we've hit that critical point of snowballing technology-wise in the IT world, in the CES type world, and here in AV, Pro AV, that we could make that very easily. And that's what concerns me. It might not be innovation is the cool new sexy shiny whatever flux capacitor, if you will, but it is a lot of the things that we rely on, a lot of the bread and butter products of the AV world jumping onto IoT because that's where it is right now, without this background knowledge of cyber security that's going to really bite us in the tuchus, if I may. It's really limiting because I'll go to Infocom. I didn't go this year, but I went last year, and I saw so many great things that would be fantastic new ways of doing the same stuff that I couldn't look at because of the way it was handled. Some of the controls, some of the room, even things like room scheduling and room automation, like the RMSs and the Utilities and the this and the that. All those companies, a lot of them have cloud. We need on-prem. We need secure on-prem. We need doesn't look at the outside world to do these things, but we need them to do these things. So we're in that weird situation. We don't have the shiny new innovation, but everybody's jumping on that bandwagon a little quick.
Let me ask this as we wrap this part up here. Charlie, and it's Charlie and Jane and Don, all three of you. One of the things that I have heard for years, back when I was a tech manager, was the bemoaning of the industry as they complained that more and more end users were coming to InfoComm and other trade shows. I was a tech manager. I thought it was great. I still think it's great, the fact that you've got folks from every angle of the AV industry that go to these trade shows and give feedback. That's where I want to go with this question, though, is Dawn coming to InfoComm is as important and as necessary to Charlie as Jay going, because of what she just said. Jay may never know, right? And I'm using all three of you. Jay may never know the security needs or the security limitations that Dawn has, but she does. And getting that through a game of telephone is a lot less efficient than her telling Charlie directly exactly what I need.
And that's where we as a manufacturer have to walk a fine line, because we love our partners like AVI-SPL, Vitlog, Diversified, all these guys. They are our go-to-market strategy, right? We don't want to be selling to every Tom, Dick, and Harry with a credit card. Sorry, no. There's a level of expertise, especially from the security integration side. But you're absolutely right, Tim. We need to know directly from the horse's mouth, what are these security implications? And you talk to one bank, it's one thing. You talk to a different bank, it's similar, but there may be some key differences. And then you start looking at government implications, it really blows up. We also have issues where sometimes with depending on who President A is in a fight with for president, with Emperor B. Therefore, this technology can or can't even be exported. So you're absolutely right. We have to listen to the end user, but at the same time, we don't want to alienate our integration partners because they really are, at the end of the day, the guys that have to make it all work. So it's a huge problem. We love having folks like Dawn at InfoComm and other events, and we're constantly looking at how do we get closer to the voice of the customer, but we never want that to be at the sacrifice of the traditional dealer community. And so that's where I think some of these roundtables that I know you participate a lot in, Tim, are really valuable. I think a lot of these years ago started off as just other ways of marketing and doing little self-serving commercials, but it's really opened up to where, hey, Dawn, off the record, we're coming out with this new product. And she says, well, off the record, this is what it would need to do if we, off the record, would even look at it. And there's a lot of these kind of wink and nudge conversations. We loop in guys like Jay to say, okay, do you guys have the expertise to install this, or how can we make it simpler? And that's really where our industry is evolving, and it's pretty exciting. Like to Don's point, with some of these new innovations, but the problem is there's 19 different ways to do it. So figuring out the best way to make it happen.
Yeah. Tim, end users showing up at InfoComm and then having some sort of conflict with the integration partner that may or may not be there. I mean, to me, I think it's fairly simple. I mean, it's a responsibility of the integration firm to manage their end users and prospects. So if you're going to send somebody off to a conference that's got 40,000 people, it may be challenging logistically, but that's what you're paid to do. and it's not to alienate any manufacturer at all, but to be a resource for your customers. Yeah. And I think that the people that succeed in this industry, frankly, are good at being able to kind of play it in the middle of the fairway with all the manufacturers and then present a compelling case to the customer or prospect. But, InfoComm's kind of, organized chaos, but it's also a heck of a lot of commerce being done as well.
Right. But if I may, I think sort of the evolution of our field, our industry in general, is kind of challenging for the integrators, but good on the part for the manufacturers, is a lot more of us end users are coming from integrators. I've discovered in the past decade or so, a lot more former integrators going to work as end users, which means we're more educated. We know more what we're looking for and looking at. We can have these conversations. You know, the Charlies and the other manufacturers are getting a more educated end user discussion because we know what we're talking about. For Jay and the other integrators, it can be a mixed bag. It can be, hey, we know exactly what we want and we're going to work with you, and we value the integrator's expertise and we value the rep chain and the distribution chain. But on the other hand, we have a lot of these smaller one-off things that we can just do in-house, so we don't necessarily need you for every little job like we did in the old days. So it's kind of that balancing act for the integrator side, but it's pretty good news, I think, from the manufacturing side, because like we're not just off the street, whoa, shiny, you know.
Hey, Tim, I digress for just real quick on the IoT thing. Just another thought that I had on that. You know, one of the things I've observed about this industry, and I think Charlie touched on it and everything, Don, you know, I'm certainly not young anymore, okay? We don't have enough young, I'm 62 for God. So we don't have enough young people, and particularly young people with an IT background that are interested in our industry. And I think once you figure out, and there are, you know, some of these problems and challenges that Charlie and Donna mentioned about security with IoT, IoT is the kind of thing that gets young technical people excited that you can network all this stuff. They don't get excited about microphones. They don't get excited about LCDs. They don't get excited. At video conference in the old days used to be exciting. That's not exciting anymore. But what is exciting is when you got the biggest player, Microsoft, saying the kind of things they are. That's how you can, in my opinion, you know, the future recruiting for the young people in our industry. That's the kind of thing that if we can keep pushing it, that's going to help. I really, you know, to figure it all out, or at least as much as we can, security problems and everything else in between. I think you're very likely going to have an influx of young, talented, engineering, technical people that can really help our industry grow.
I will say a lot of our interns want to get into the cybersecurity track here at Redacted. So.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, honestly, we should take this and send this clip, you know, to you know, our buddy Kelly Perkins at SCA and Ignite and folks over at Avixa and their programs as well. So, all right, guys, that actually is going to do it for it. We did have a couple other stories. Congratulations to AVI-SPL, by the way, for picking up another company.
Thank you.
You kind of they kind of rounded out themselves, which I didn't understand. I didn't when I first heard that they picked up digital video networks, and it was to cover an area that they weren't quite covering in the Southwest. So I was a little shocked that they didn't have an area down there. So congratulations to them. But
Tim, that's why they bought us in Tennessee and Memphis when I sold to AVI last year. You know, I would like to think it was my winning personality that convinced them, but I think it was more of we served to a geographic. We were fulfilling a geographic and plugging a geographic gap that they had in the map. They had no offices in the state of Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, wherever. So we had kind of a unique situation there. I think that's pretty much the same way with the newest acquisition. You got some places in Albuquerque and out that way, and that in Arizona, I think in Scottsdale and everything and Phoenix, that can really be pretty lucrative for the company.
Absolutely. So, but yeah, congratulations to them as well, and to Jay. Folks, that's going to do it for us. So thank you all so much. Ms. Dawn Mead, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Absolutely. And how do people get a hold of you if they want?
Well, obviously, I can't tell you where I work or how to find me there, but you can always find me on social media at AVDawn on the Twitters and several other of the social networks. I believe I'm at AVDawn on most of them. On LinkedIn, Dawn Mead. And of course, you can always find me here on AVNation.tv, where Kelly Perkins and I co-host the AV Social Show, which we just recorded one earlier this week, and I think it's going to be a good show.
It was really good. It was really good. It was all about email marketing, and I was fascinated. I was just the yahoo in the background recording, and it was fascinating to me. So, Mr. Charlie Jones from Sennheiser, thank you, sir.
Not a problem, Tim. Always happy to be here. You can typically find me at the Admirals Club of your closest airport. But if you'd like to find more about Sennheiser and where Sennheiser actually is, at Sennheiser USA is our Twitter. Of course, we're also on all the other social medias, Facebooks and Snapchats and all that kind of good stuff. Or if you really just want to pick my brain, charlie.jones@sennheiser.com. And if nothing else, I can point you at the closest good barbecue place. So thanks for having me, Tim.
Sure, absolutely. All right, Mr. Myers, thank you, sir. How do people get a hold of you or AVI-SPL or one of your books?
Appreciate it. Yeah, Tim. So Twitter at JB as in boy Myers. Email address for AVI, jay.myers@AVI-SPL.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and then also I have a separate page for jmyersceo.com that I do a lot of marketing of some books and things that I've written.
All right, very good. Check them out as well. Thank you all so much. For me, for Tim Albright, at this point in the year, I'm gearing up for my Chicago Bears, doing something, I'm sure. That'll have take place in about 2 or 3 weeks is when they'll kick off the at least the preseason for NFL. So, but for more importantly, for the folks here at AVNation, go by the website avnation.tv. That is avnation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. While you're there, please check out our supporter section. These are the folks that help us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek and Dawn's show AV Social. In about 6 weeks' time, we'll head to Denver and give you everything from the CEDIA Expo 2019. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.